Hello, you beautiful human. Welcome back to my channel. I'm sleepy. This is gonna be my May... Oh my lord, my May wrap up. Where's the time gone? I think I read about 10 books in May. Most of these are very like, I was working my butt off trying to get these read, so this is gonna be a very interesting wrap up. So this is the one that I most recently finished actually. I reread Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. I'm currently taking a whole Shakespeare course at uni, so the whole course is just literally Shakespeare. So Romeo and Juliet, this, amazing. Amazing, wasn't it? It was fantastic. I did not like this the first time I read it, but I just don't think high school is the right place at all to start reading Shakespeare. I detested it. I detested Shakespeare, and now coming back to it so many years later, fantastic. Like, it's just brilliant. Out of the ones I've read so far for this course, it's only been 3 so far, but Romeo and Juliet takes the cake because of the language. Just so beautiful. It was almost unputdownable. I'm sure you know the story of Romeo and Juliet. There were actually a lot of things in here that I forgot since reading it the first time, namely stuff to do with Paris, who is Juliet's intended husband, but the language is just like breathtaking, jaw-dropping, heart-stopping. It is so incredible. The only thing I do wish is that I fell in love with so many of the characters. Honestly, I love Mercutio, I love Benvolio. I really wish Juliet had the same oomph, the same flavor, had the same spark as a lot of the other characters, because I think Juliet really pales in comparison to a lot of the other, just everyone else in the cast. Yeah, and I was so disappointed when I get to like the final scene where Juliet, you know, wakes up and sees Romeo dead. I feel like I remembered her having more to say, but she's very quickly silenced. And yeah, I just really wanted more from Juliet actually. So that is Romeo and Juliet. I feel like I need to give this 5 stars. I did give it 4 stars because, I mean, I honestly don't really care about the whole Romeo and Juliet plotline, if I'm being honest. It's just, it gets such a high rating for the language, for the beauty, and it is ultimately a play about the tragedy of like loving way too quickly, losing yourself in love, the dangers of infatuation. I don't really read this as like a wholesale love story. I really don't see it in that way, especially if you listen to like Friar Lawrence and what he really has to say. I think he really gets at the true tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. Just overall such a good time. So if you haven't read Romeo and Juliet, I honestly highly recommend that you do. This is the what is this, Modern Library edition. Any of the ones like Folger's Modern Library, any of the ones that have like some commentary or have some annotations, especially on the page as the lines, I think that would be really helpful, especially if you're coming to Shakespeare for the first time. But Romeo and Juliet is like a great place to start if you're looking for somewhere to start, if you've ever been afraid of Shakespeare. I mean, I would still rather just go and watch it rather than read it, but at least you get to sit with the beautiful lines. Like, geez Louise. This next book, I really don't know how I feel about it, but I am having to start an essay on it today, so I better figure out my feelings towards it, or at least get some clear idea of what I'm writing about. I think I have a good idea because the book is H is for Hawk by Helen Macdonald. This one I read for my ecological lit course. This is a memoir. It's a piece of creative nonfiction. Those are genres that I really do not enjoy as a whole, so I was really ambivalent going into this, and then I was even more ambivalent because it is about hawk taming hawks, taking these creatures and, you know, essentially molding them to do our bidding. For Helen Macdonald, who is a professional falconer, her reasoning, her impetus for doing these things, it's a bit different because H is for Hawk commences when she loses her father, and H is for Hawk it's ultimately a memoir of grief. Also training a goshawk, thank you for helping me pronounce that word, because it's pretty much her distraction. She is burning away her humanity. She wants to leave the world behind. She wants to enter into this wildness, this wilderness, and essentially become one with her goshawk, whom she names Mabel. She names her hawk Mabel because the hawk has no conception of the grief that Helen is going through, and so for her it's kind of a safe space where the grief of losing her father doesn't really exist. But H is for Hawk is really interesting. My favorite thing was probably the writing. I guess it does focus on grief in like her trying so much to stuff it down, to repress it, to ultimately leave behind the world. of humanity and enter into her own little secluded isolation with her hawk, where she almost sometimes seems to become the hawk. She certainly wants to possess the eyes of the hawk. I think my essay is going to be all about looking, the gaze, watching, invisibility, yeah, everything about the eyes. That's something that really interests me, like looking at people. Hi. This is also kind of a correction or a response to T.H. White's, his novel, or his piece, really. It's not, I guess you could call it a novel. His piece called The Goshawk. You probably know T.H. White because he is most famous for his retellings of Arthurian legend, The Sword in the Stone, The Once and Future King, Merlin. He's the one who's kind of conceptualized, I think, Merlin in popular culture now. He also secluded himself in isolation with this hawk named Goss that he got. And Helen Helen really goes at him because T.H. White's kind of huge piece about the hawk is a disaster in training his hawk. It's incorrect. He submits Goss to all kinds of tortures. He has no experience. He's essentially taken on this thing that he has no ample resume to be doing, but he just wants to train a hawk. And so in Helen's memoir, it's her like being like, okay, this is how you actually do it without torturing your hawk needlessly. I think H is for Hawk did become really repetitive because there were just so many scenes of her and her hawk going out hunting, her doing the same things over and over again. I think a lot of the examination of White's Goshawk was also repetitive, turning around the same things. Overall, just a feeling of unsettledness, ambivalence, not really knowing where I stand with my feelings towards like hawking in general, mostly because I don't have that much information, or that's just not really, it feels like a very upper class British world that I don't really have a lens on. I mean, Helen does address like the elitism associated with the sport of hawking or of taming a hawk, along with the like sexism and racism that is, and classism that is inherent in the phenomenon of training a hawk, because it has been a symbol and sign of prestige for years and years and years. But she never really touches on like, well, how does the hawk feel about it? What is the inverse? What if you just didn't train hawks? I'm not really sure, but like I said, I don't have tons of information on, I don't know, the ethics of training hawks. I did give it 3 stars because really excellent writing. She discusses a lot of different ideas in here, but overall, because of the genre and because of the content matter, it just was really not my thing. I don't know if I'd ever read more from Helen Macdonald, and I certainly wouldn't ever reread this, but I now have to write a paper on it because that is the nature of doing English degrees. So yeah, hopefully I have enough, I think, information in here to write a solid paper on like looking and stuff. But anyway, that is H is for Hawk. Don't really recommend. One that I would recommend if you like experimental writing is How I Became a Nun by Cesar Era. Okay, it was interesting. I didn't really enjoy it. Yeah, if you're someone who likes new, exciting, experimental things being done in lit, I think Cesar Era is probably the man for you, because How I Became a Nun, first of all, it's not, the title is extremely, yeah, I guess it's extremely misleading. No one ever becomes a nun in How I Became a Nun. Cesar Era is famous for misleading, tripping people up. He's very experimental. He famously does not edit his novels. He believes firmly in only moving forward, not looking back in terms of writing. So he'll write a set amount of pages per day, and the next day doesn't look on them, just keeps going wherever he left off. So How I Became a Nun starts with this 6-year-old child going out to get ice cream with their father. The strawberry ice cream turns out to be laced with cyanide. They get violently ill. At the same time, their father murders the ice cream vendor for selling them poisoned ice cream. The 6-year-old wakes up in a hospital after going through so many different ailments, fevers, delusions, illnesses, and of course their father is in prison for murdering this ice cream vendor. What follows is just kind of like this trippy fever dream where the 6-year-old child is narrating their life all the way until the end of the novel, which horrifically ends, and it's just very like, what is going on at all times? A lot of surrealism, a lot of dream sequences, a lot of hallucinations. I didn't enjoy it. I don't know, some experimental lit, some experimental writing is definitely for me, others not so much. I don't know if Cesar Era is necessarily the man for me, so yeah, but I would recommend if you just like weird, short, tightly wound, tightly spun, and really horrific little stories, because I mean, this is like, it's called Sinisterly Funny. I don't know, I don't think it's funny, I just think it's sinister. Another Shakespeare play, The Taming of the Shrew. Also not the best time of my life. I didn't really have high hopes for this one. Okay, so Taming of the Shrew. You have the two sisters, Bianca and Kat. Kat is called Kat the Cursed because she's so loud. She's just not womanly enough, and her younger sister Bianca is like the spitting image of perfection. So everyone wants to marry Bianca. No one wants to marry Kat, but their father is like, you can't marry Bianca until I find a husband for Kat. So all of Bianca's suitors go out of their way to find a guinea pig, essentially, to marry Katerina. Who do they find but this man who is like, I'm gonna marry Kat because like I want a challenge, like I very much want a marriage where I'm gonna have to subdue and make my wife submit to me, but like it's gonna be difficult, and he also wants her money because there's a sizable dowry involved. So Petruchio, who is the man, is the guinea pig. He sets out to woo Kate. It's wildly uncomfortable. It's a little bit hard to read. There's a lot of violence involved. Actually, H is for Hawk and Taming of the Shrew, I mean, they have so much in common, because women are often, especially in the Renaissance and in the medieval period and in Shakespeare's time as well, figured as birds who need to be tamed, especially hawks in general. There is a lot of language that Petruchio uses for Kate, which is extremely similar to the language that MacDonald and like hawking books use to tame their hawks. So there's a lot. I think reading both of these in the same month was a little bit wild because they spoke to each other so well. But in the background of all this, you have so many people taking on different identities, which is probably the thing that most interested me in Taming of the Shrew. People swapping their identities, people taking on disguises, the servant becoming the master, the suitor becoming a tutor so they can get closer to the younger sister Bianca, the performance of like gender and just your whole identity as a performance that you can switch on and switch off at anyone's beckoning. Overall, I gave Taming of the Shrew 3 stars. Wasn't my favorite play ever to be in. Hi, another exciting development coming in at the end of my month, so I thought I would mention it here. Okay, so remember how I've been complaining for the past like 6 or 7 videos that I need a new office chair so that I can stop stealing my partners? Sihu has very kindly not only sponsored today's video, but sent me their new office chair. So they sent me their Sihu Doro C300, which is an ergonomic office chair. Let me tell you about it. This one has self-adaptive lumbar and back support. It also extends backward with flexible tracking, has a wide angle mechanical headrest, and a dynamic pressure distribution. Anyway, this one has been specifically designed to let you sit in different postures because most of the time I honestly sit cross-legged in my chair or just like with one foot up. This one is designed so that there's never a gap between your back and the seat if you're sitting upright or reclining, which prevents that strain and the fatigue you get after long periods of sitting. If you work from home like me, if you do school at home like me, you're sitting on your butt for long periods of time, and I feel like I want to make sure that I'm doing it comfortably because you only get one spine. The pre-orders for the C300, if you are interested, started on May 12th. If you pre-order now and spend $3.99, you can get an exclusive discount of $29.99. Brings the total of this chair to $270. If you guys are interested or have been looking to buy an office chair, I will leave the link to this one in the description box. Thank you so much, Sihu, for sponsoring today's video, and let's get back to the book. Next, let's talk about just something fun. This was a gift from Yen Press. Thank you so much. I got around to reading My Gently Tamed Beast, Volume 1. This was happiness. I really enjoyed this. So this is a manhwa, and this follows this young princess named Blondina. She is an orphan. She doesn't really know her true identity until some of the king's soldiers like see her in the street, and they have been searching for this long lost princess for a really long time, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's her. They save her from this really miserable life she's been leading, and they bring her to the palace. However, her father and like her brother and sister, her half brother and sister, they're not really enamored with her. They treat her poorly at best and really maliciously at worst, and so she's not really happy, although she is very grateful to, you know, have a bed, to have food, and to have a family. Things start to change when she meets this little cat, this little black cat on the palace grounds. This cat starts talking to her and she's like, oh my gosh, you're a talking cat. And he's like, do you know who you're talking to? I'm a divine beast. Because in this world there are like divine creatures who, there's like this whole history, this whole lore where they've been at war with humans, and it turns out that the cat that she's found, his name is Eamon. He's not human, although he can take on human form, and he kind of switches between human and cat form all the time. Actually like a black leopard, I guess. So he's not really a cat, but he's like a little baby cat because they're just kids. So he's just a cute little cat. And the relationship is really funny because like for most of it, he's just a little cat who just wants to play with string and stuff, even though he's like, I'm so tough, like I'm the divine leopard, blah blah blah. But like the minute cat toys are brought out or catnip is around, he just turns into this little kitty cat. So it's really fun. Yeah, it's just sweet. The first volume is very much slice of life. You just follow her life around the palace, her introduction into society, her learning etiquette, and always by her side is Eamon, who kind of serves as her guardian angel almost. So gorgeous. It's so gorgeous to see it all in color, and it was just a really beautiful work of art. So that is my Gently Raised Beast. I will definitely be looking for volume 2. I'd love to continue this because I think the storyline, I'm a little foggy on some of the lore, and I think the storyline is really gonna progress. So that is that one. I'm really glad I got to read just like something for me, because I'm just in such a reading mood, but like I can't read anything I want to read right now. I was in trouble with the library. I decided to just buy this one book that I've been reading for my thesis research, because I was really enjoying it, and I just wanted to have it pretty much always, and that is Corridors, Passages of Modernity by Roger Luckhurst. First of all, this has like 7 ratings on Goodreads, and I think even if you're not using it for an academic purpose, this is so interesting. This is the stuff that is really interesting to me. This is a history of the hallway, and why, particularly from the angle and the lens, like why do we look upon the hallway with so much dread? Think of like the hallway in The Shining, the film. Why has the hallway become this passage of doom and anxiety? And Roger Luckhurst he starts with the ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, he goes all the way up into like our modern pop culture and The Shining. It's just a full-fledged history of like this very overlooked space. There's a whole, pretty much the reason why I checked this out is there's a whole chapter on hotels, corridors in hotels, because the corridor was imagined, especially in the early Victorian period, as this place of utopia, of connections where people could just mingle, because it was just this long place where you could walk around. It was supposed to foster community, but then moving into things like the Soviet Union and their apartment complexes, how it connected to like the Soviet Union's idea to have reprogrammed citizens. It goes through different styles of architecture, what the hallway became in each of them. It has a whole section on the shopping mall, how the American shopping mall has become this like dystopian place now. There's a source in here, I think it's a website that I perused for a really long time because it was so interesting. Someone has created this whole catalog of dead malls. I think it's called deadanddyingmalls.com or something. Just the absolute ruin that has become of these superstructures. Of the estimated 1,200 malls still around in America in 2015, about a third have been considered dead or dying. They are the new ruins of modernity and have become obsessively cataloged on websites like deadmalls.com. Check out deadmalls.com because it is fascinating, it is horrific. I mean, a lot of the malls in my hometown I would classify them as dead or dying for sure. They're just these never-ending corridors, like one big hallway of dread and decay. From there it moves into systems like prisons, hotels, arcades, asylums, hospitals, universities, the gentleman's house. It has a whole period, it has a whole chapter on the gentleman's house in English society, how corridors have moved away from this utopian vision of communication and reprogramming to become just this like very private, dread-filled passage where you don't want to be. You want to get out of it. It's this liminal space. It's not a place you stay, it's a place you're traversing. Why the corridor is used so much in movies or in novels or in horror or in the Gothic. And then the last chapter is Dread and the Gothic corridors. Really fantastic. Really enjoyed this. The writing is fantastic. I think he really goes over so many different cases. The only thing I wish is very much a Western, I mean it says in the introduction, a very much Western look at the corridor. I would love something a bit more global. So if you have any recommendations on the study of corridors, the history of corridors outside of Western civilization, that would very much be interesting to see if to see similarities and differences and all of that jazz. So yeah. Just incredibly interesting. I ate this up and I learned so much about so many different things. So if you're interested in, I don't know, anything, in history, in architecture, in film, audiobook that I listened to and that, I guess you guys predicted it because everyone who has read this that I was reading in the comments section, you were like, we have nothing to say about this book, don't really know what to say about it, and I feel like I'm kind of there with you because I listened to The Woman in the Purple Skirt by Natsuko Imamura on audio. Was a novel. Yeah, The Woman in the Purple Skirt. I kind of read this as like the difficulty of making friends as an adult, but taken to the extreme. This is a novel about stalking, about obsession, about loneliness, and about rivalry that society has kind of created for women in the workplace and just in general. So The Woman in the Purple Skirt is narrated by the woman in the yellow cardigan. The woman in the yellow cardigan she's almost an exile. No one notices her. She's very much on the margins. No one really talks to her. She has no friends. She barely speaks to anyone in the novel, but on the other hand, we really don't know too much about her. Why? I don't know, maybe this is just the natural path her life has taken, but she's very envious of the woman in the purple skirt because she is like the spotlight of any room she walks into. People want to help her naturally. They want to come up to her. They want to start conversations with her. A lot of people, including children in their town, like they're obsessed with the woman in the purple skirt. They want to play with her. They want to involve her in some capacity in their lives. Whereas the woman in the yellow cardigan is just an observer. She's become a watcher. But her obsession with the woman in the purple skirt, like wanting to be near her, maybe it really has nothing to do with the woman in general, but just getting a slice of that attention and emerging a little bit from her own anonymity, and getting some like human connection, I think, is the big one. So it starts to take on more and more ridiculous layers because the woman in the yellow cardigan starts to influence the woman in the purple skirt from afar without this woman ever really noticing. For example, she starts to place like these ads for jobs on the bench where she sits every day, and she'll like highlight the ones she thinks the woman in the purple skirt should apply for, and so it becomes like it does delve into this very sinister influence. The woman in the purple skirt is having her life controlled and dictated to an extent by the woman in the yellow cardigan's actions, even though she has no idea that it's happening. So eventually she does get the job that the woman in the yellow cardigan circled for her, which as it turns out is at a hotel where the woman in the yellow cardigan also works. So they both become maids at this hotel cleaning rooms, and once you get to this hotel setting, it is definitely all about workplace gossip, harassment, the very competitive, I guess, ladder climbing, the corporate glamorization, the corporate dream, and the corporate ridiculousness. I'm not saying too much more about it because once you get to the hotel section, which is pretty early on in the novel, things just get worse and worse and stars. Ultimately, I think is just a novel about loneliness, about watching other people, obsession, and I think the conditions of the workplace, especially relevant to Japan where this novel is set. So I give it 3 stars because, yeah, like I did have a bit to say about it clearly, but at the end I was just like, okay. It was just kind of like an okay moment. The novel is very short, but I did find it very satisfying to listen to. I really like the audiobook narrator, and it is very slice of life, very much just describing everything these 2 women are doing. So yeah, if you read it, tell me what you make of it, because I think this is one that has left a lot of people a little bit stumped, just with kind of like what was this a little bit. At least that's those are the reviews I've been reading, and that's what you've been saying. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars because it's middle of the road. Okay, then we have Richard III by Shakespeare. You're gonna be seeing a lot of Shakespeare in my upcoming wrap-ups, I think. I've never read Richard III. I'm really glad I did, although this is one of Shakespeare's longer plays, and man, does it feel like that. So this got a 4-star rating for me. I really enjoyed this. Richard is a really fun character to follow. He's such a villain, but it's just so fun. It's just so fun. I also learned a lot of history. What I do wish is that it wasn't so long. I think a lot of this could be cut or just changed and edited. This is one of his earlier plays, and I did find that my enjoyment level of Richard III like started really high, and then it just kind of went down and down and down as the play like stretched out and became, I don't know, a little bit boring at times, honestly. So Richard III details Richard's rise to power, his hunger for the throne. This is the history that is right before the Tudor domination, I guess. The rise of the Tudor dynasty as the War of the Roses comes to an end once and for all. So it's about that period in history, in English history, and yeah, some of the lines were some of the passages fantastic. I am set next, starting today actually, to read Richard II, which I've heard from you guys is absolutely fantastic. He wrote Richard II after Richard III, so I'm really excited to get to Richard III. The second. Just a lot of intrigue, backstabbing, politics, war, machinations, Machiavellian schemes, and that is so that is Richard III. Okay, the last one I have here, again, don't really know what to say about it because it is a book. It is a book that was written. That is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This was given to me by Book of the Month. Thank you so much. I was really excited to get into this because I just wanted to read like a fantasy next to all of these school picks, and The Stardust Thief did not deliver. It did not deliver for me. This was very lackluster, very mediocre, and like I said, just a book that was written. This does follow the perspectives of 3 different people. We have the Midnight Merchant. She had her whole entire family murdered by some people, and she was pretty much saved by this djinn who is kind of her guardian angel, and they go around selling illegal artifacts. You also have the son of the Sultan named Mazen. He is very much golden retriever energy. He's kind of this boy who loves stories and is very lighthearted and whimsical. We also have Aisha, who is one of the 40 thieves. She's really cool. Aisha was probably my favorite character. She was just interesting. But the rest of this book was just so boring. You really get hardly any insight into the characters. They felt really flat. I think the pacing was messy. The plot was not engaging. You follow the 3 of these people as they get banded together to go on this mission from the Sultan himself to find the lamp. To find this lamp. These are all like djinn relics essentially, and they all have different magical powers, and the lamp is something that the Sultan really wants. I think it was messy. I don't think it was very good. I did not feel attached to anyone. I didn't care about the stakes. It was just really plain. It was just really plain, unfortunately, so I don't think I will be continuing with The Stardust Thief. It was not compelling. The writing was very basic. It had no flair. I feel like it could have been written by anyone. I gave it 3 stars because, again, it was just middle of the road, maybe even a 2.5 now that I'm thinking about it, but I do feel like I lost a little bit of time with this one. And I will say that towards the end, like the I don't know, the structure, the pacing, the involvement did pick up, but by then it was way too late to recapture any kind of interest or investment that I could have had in the story. So that's the Stardust Thief. Really unfortunate. I don't really recommend this one. There are a lot better fantasies. Okay, I'm getting the battery. Yeah, I'm getting the heat flashing signal on my camera, so I'm gonna go. That is everything I read in May. I hope you enjoyed this video, this little wrap up, and let me know what you read. A lot of schoolwork, just a lot of schoolwork kicking me in the butt. So those are my May reads. So thank you so much for being here. I will see you very soon in my next video.